Hello and welcome to the interview. It is not often that we get a guest of such distinguished caliber, and particularly from India, as Aruna Roy. For those of you who are not familiar with Aruna's work in India, one could say she's a champion of the right to information legislation in that country, unfortunately, which we are still waiting for in Sri Lanka. But within that broader context, Aruna, a very warm welcome to the program. It is impossible, really, to capture the richness of your life's work in what you've done, where you've been, and what you have actually helped blossom in the country of your birth. Very warm welcome to Sri Lanka, and to locate it in the debate that we are having in post-war Sri Lanka. Also harking back to some of the discussions when the war was on, in terms of the right to information. I think you would agree with me that in our regimes in South Asia, the excuse of the war against terrorism is very often used as a means or a discourse through which you clamp down on the public's right to know. Now, is this something that you experienced in India as well in the years, over a decade, I think, or 10 years certainly, of championing for RTI in that country?
Actually, this was an argument that was very weak. It was there, but it was subsumed by other arguments.
Because of the historical the time that you were operating in?
No, I think there's been terrorism. No, it's been post. I mean, our entire work began in a formal and visible sense in '96.
Right.
And but the media joined us, and we you see, it began as a peasant and workers fight to see records relating to wages in central Rajasthan. Yeah. But then very soon, when we sat on this 40-day strike in a very big town in the center of Rajasthan, people from all over India came. So we had 400 people sign up for wanting the right to know. The legislation was made by the Press Council of India within 3 months of this protest. So everybody joined in, and it was very difficult to give arguments, and even politicians joined us, you see. So the arguments that were proffered were not, I mean, they couldn't really give any logical arguments, because even for terrorism, if you take, they say the instance of Bombay.
Right. Last year.
Right. You know, the arguments have been, and that's why there has been a vote against this kind of jingoism, because it's also a failure of governance. Yeah. So if you see terrorism or any of these occurrences as international disasters, but as also failures of governance, then you know that the best thing you can do is tighten governance, and for that, right to information is important.
But therein lies the rub, isn't it? I mean, in terms of that argument gaining traction amongst the vote base in Sri Lanka, one has found that there is the casual acknowledgement that some degree of transparency and accountability brought about by RTI legislation can help ordinary people live, or rather address issues like corruption. But perennially, the problem has been anchoring that to the public consciousness, getting this public support for this legislation, coming up with the messaging, help, in the long term, getting the public along with you. And civil society has unfortunately failed here. Now, what worked in India and why? You spoke about a large degree of public support. Where was the wellspring for that?
Actually, it is an understanding.
Yeah.
That in a democracy, when you vote someone to power, you're only vesting your sovereignty in part with that individual to exercise it in a judicial manner. Now, if that person is exercising my sovereignty for 5 years, then I need to monitor it. And the only way I can monitor it is by the right to know. So in our law, actually when we were discussing issues that should not be disclosed, there is an override. And that override came from a civil servant. And normally civil servants are, very recalcitrant about right to information, but we have had some extraordinary set of civil servants. So the civil servant said that, why are you quibbling? He said, Dr. N.C. Saxena, he said, what you must say is that what an MP or an MLA can see, I can see, because they are only my representatives. I am the sovereign giving them my sovereignty. So that is a general override in our law which says what the MP and MLA can see, I can see. So therefore, considering that there is common sense, you see, it's a peculiar situation, because in a democracy you have to trust. If the government wants trust, it has to trust its people. And after all, we are the country. So, and if you trust people and you give them responsibility, then there is a certain sense of what should I say, balance in the way people also act.
I mean, when I listen to you, the case seems to be so extraordinary in the fullest definition of that word, that one might struggle to take from this unique example ways in which other countries like Sri Lanka can also be inspired and follow a similar path. Let me concretize that example. There is no trust between government and its peoples in Sri Lanka. We have 300,000 people in IDP camps who are suspected terrorists first and then have to be proved innocent. We have new minorities of civil society voices who have been critical of government. We do not have dissent in this country, and those who do stand the risk of personal physical harm and have to go sometimes into self-exile. So that sovereignty in the people, which you said is the foundation for RT and India, is questionable in its existence here. Now, how do you, I mean, I'm challenging you to kind of help us work around this.
India is not uniformly what you described.
Sure.
There are pockets. There is the northeast. There is Jammu and Kashmir, and there is Gujarat, in which there was genocide practiced by the government in power at the time, which is still in power. If we see the use of right to information by these suppressed people, where there is a right to know, what do they want to know really? They want to know, they want to see a police report, they want to establish that they've been raped or they have had problems. They want to establish, in Jammu and Kashmir there's a right to information law now. And because of that, democracy has gained. A friend of mine who's there, Dr. Muzaffar Bhatt, a dental doctor, who's heading the Right to Information campaign in J&K, he says that democratic space, for creating democratic space in an area which has been conflict-ridden for the last 60 years has been possible because of right to information, because it establishes the truth. And ultimately, if the truth gets established, then you are on the way to peace. Without truth, there can be no peace. Because if you cast aside truth, you create resentment and you create antagonism, and if you push it to the wall, you create terrorism. We have Maoism in India.
Absolutely.
For the same reasons.
Yes, in the northeastern regions.
No, in the whole of central India we've got Maoism.
That's right. Now, I want to come back to that, but in terms of having the legislation as one thing and using it as another, in terms of creating awareness, getting people to use it, holding local government accountable, there is a divide. I'm sure you would agree. Now, in a conversation that we had before our discussion on the telly, you said that a number of people, hundreds of thousands of people, are actually using the legislation. That's fantastic news. Can you give us numbers? Can you give us, in terms of what issues they seem to be most interested in?
I'll tell you that there have been 400,000 people in an extrapolation from a study that's been done.
Across India?
Across India, in rural areas. This is not the urban lot.
Sure.
The urban lot are separate. Let me give you a series of examples. People who have not had rations, for instance. Just an application to the ration shop to see the register. So you compare your ration card with the register and you know theft. Go to a hospital and you want to know what free medicines are there. Ask for the list. And if you haven't been supplied that medicine, go up and register another complaint. You're listened to. If you are, for instance, in a police station, if you are not heard, if you're not given a copy of the first information report, you're given a copy of the first information report. Licensing, electricity, gas connections, roads, and also very complicated issues like appointments to police departments. Everything has come and everything has led not to violence. Not to violence. That's what I want to emphasize. It's led to understanding and criticism and acceptance by governance that it should change, and created a more responsible reaction amongst citizens that in a democracy they also have to monitor. But as this is a youth program, I think, I'd like to speak about the way young people have used it. There's an organization in Delhi called Josh, which uses it for student affairs. For instance, to look at cut-off lists for admission to colleges, to look at answer papers where they feel that it hasn't been judged rightly. In the UPSC exam, the Union Public Service Commission exam, which is the IAS and all the important services, to see the cutoff marks. They have used it, and now they have pushed the University of Delhi and the Vice Chancellor of Delhi to start implementing the suo motu disclosure of information required under Section 4. They pushed this meeting, which was held recently, about a month and a half ago, in which all the principals of all the major colleges of Delhi The Vice Chancellor and the Pro-Vice Chancellor were present and looked at the act. So if we look at construction of a country
Sure.
rather than destruction, I feel balanced, reasoned, rational judgment is very important to get the youth on into the battle for real democracy, rather than push them into acts of violence or into acts of regression.
You spent